Before anyone utters the word Rome, before anyone speculates about clay court tactics, ranking implications, or the psychological toll of a European spring, let me stop you and give you a single number. 171,000 people. That is the number of human beings who watched a 20-year-old from the Philippines sit down in a folding chair in front of a bank of microphones and cameras and answer questions. Not a match, not a highlight reel, not a trickshot compilation. A press conference? A post-practice, pre-tournament, mostly boring ritual that tennis players endure because the contract with the media says they must. And while that young woman was speaking, while she was fielding queries about her game plan, her travel schedule, her hopes for the season, Carlos Alcaraz, the two-time Wimbledon champion, the reigning French Open winner, the most decorated young man in the sport, pulled 29,000 viewers for his own press conference. Let that sink in. A player who has graced magazine covers, signed nine-figure endorsement deals, and been anointed as the heir to the Big Three was outdrawn nearly 6-1 by a player most casual fans could not have picked out of a lineup 18 months ago. Now here is why that number matters beyond the shock value. As a tennis country, the Philippines is a blank space on the map. You can search your memory, scroll through decades of Grand Slam draws, and you will come up empty. The nation has produced no legends, no top 10 phenoms, no deep runs worthy of a documentary. And then suddenly out of that void this talent arrives, not gradually, not with the usual developmental arc of junior titles and challenger appearances. She arrives like a weather event. So what does she do with the attention? She takes it in stride, she absorbs the pressure, and here's what I appreciate most, her resilience. Because while she was drawing 171,000 people to a non-match, consider what the other big names managed. Coco Gauff, the defending Australian Open champion, 29,000. Aryna Sabalenka, the world number one, the powerhouse who has bullied her way through draws like a wrecking ball, 9,000. Alex Eala, that is the name you need to remember, drew nearly 6 times the audience of the world's number one for a glorified Q&A session. Now you understand why Martina Navratilova stopped mid-broadcast and said what she said. 18 Grand Slam singles titles, 9 Wimbledon championships, one of 2 women in tennis history who can genuinely argue for the title of greatest of all time. That is who interrupted a live Australian Open broadcast in January 2026. And she did not use her airtime to praise Eala's forehand, to admire her footwork, or to analyze her fitness regime. Instead, she issued a direct structural demand to a Grand Slam institution. Her words, "The organizers need to keep more in mind where the players are from and what the actual fan base is here." Lindsay Davenport stood beside her and added a layer of context that should have stopped every tournament director in their tracks. She called Eala probably the most famous female athlete the Philippines has ever produced, not one of the most famous. The most famous, across basketball, boxing, volleyball, entertainment, an entire archipelago of 90 million people, and this tennis player sits at the top of that pyramid. Meanwhile, on BBC Radio 5 Live, Great Britain's Billie Jean King Cup captain Anne Keathavong heard about the queues forming outside Court 6. She listened to the reports of families driving across Melbourne, couples taking days off work, fans flying in from other Australian states specifically for one match. And Keathavong said simply, "I couldn't believe the queue. Who's on the scheduling team? 3 voices, 3 separate platforms, 1 verdict, they put her on the wrong court." Court 6 at Melbourne Park holds approximately 1,500 people. The queue outside stretched hundreds of yards. Security had to clear the overflow after the match had already begun. The Australian Open's official response was that it would take it as a learning for next year. That sentence is more revealing than anything else said publicly about Eala in 2026. Because if a tournament that had every piece of information available to it, the record-breaking press conference numbers, Melbourne's 60,000-strong Filipino community, the social media engagement unlike anything a player outside the top 30 had ever generated, if that tournament still needed a crowd scene to teach it a lesson, then what happened was not a scheduling error. It was a failure of imagination. Meet Vive, she's a Filipina living in Sydney. She traveled to Melbourne not for the Australian Open, not for a holiday, not even for tennis in general, but specifically for one match, specifically for Eala. When asked why she made that trip, Vive said she always carries the flag and the country proudly. She's becoming a national hero. Everyone stops what they're doing and tunes in. One woman, one face, one journey from Sydney to Melbourne on nothing but faith. Multiply her by the thousands who showed up that day. Then ask yourself what those same people did when the next opportunity came around. As of this week, before a single point has been played in Rome, videos and reports are already documenting thousands of Filipino fans gathered outside the Foro Italico. Eala was filmed thanking supporters who had traveled to Italy before the main draw even began. Ticket demand has surged. The scenes forming outside those marble gates look very familiar because those fans didn't wait for a result. They didn't wait for a ranking. They booked flights to one of the most historically loaded cities in the world on pure belief. And in this story, belief has a way of being repaid. Let's rewind 8 days. April 24, 2026. Eala walks off the clay in Madrid after losing 2-6, 1-6 to Elise Mertens in under an hour. No contested third set, no dramatic tiebreak, no moral victory buried in the scoreline. It was her third straight loss on clay this season, dropping her from a career high of roughly number 29 in the world back down toward 44. The clay had not been kind, she had a choice to make. The WTA 125 event in Catalonia was right there. Smaller draw, lighter competition, ranking points. She genuinely needed a sensible, safe, low-risk option. She skipped it entirely. She pointed herself at Rome, the biggest clay event outside Roland Garros, the deepest field in women's tennis outside a Grand Slam, a tournament where she had exactly 20 points to defend, having lost in the first round last year. That means every win at the Foro Italico is pure gain. No pressure, no points to seal, nothing to protect, only forward. Greg Rusedski, the 1997 U.S. Open finalist, addressed her clay losses directly on his podcast. "The losses she takes," he said, "this is part of the learning experience. She's too good a player, she'll figure it out. What I like is her resilience." The choice she made after Madrid tells you more about who she is than any score line ever could. She did not go where it was easier, she went where it mattered. What Rome represents right now goes beyond one player and one tournament. Li Na won the 2011 French Open and ignited an entire Chinese tennis market that the WTA had spent years trying to unlock through conventional means. One player, one title, one cultural moment that transformed the sport's commercial footprint across an entire continent. Tournament directors are now invoking that moment when they talk about Eala, because the Southeast Asian diaspora, spread across Melbourne, Dubai, Riyadh, Rome, and Los Angeles, does not just represent passionate fans. It represents a commercial infrastructure the sport has never fully mobilized. The Italian Open is also in the middle of something historically significant of its own. FITP President Angelo Bainaghi has publicly and persistently made the case for Rome to be recognized as a fifth Grand Slam. What that campaign needs beyond prize money and courts is global visibility. The kind that arrives when an entire nation goes online on a Tuesday afternoon to watch what's happening at the Foro Italico. After Rome comes Roland Garros, then Eastbourne, where Eala was a finalist in 2025, then the grass season and eventually the Australian Open 2027. The tournament that publicly promised to take the Melbourne chaos as a learning. That moment will be the real test. Either the institution delivers on its word, or the promise quietly dissolves into the kind of vague organizational language that protects no one. Rome is the first checkpoint. The fans who believed in Alex Eala before the rankings caught up, who tracked her scores when the broadcast streams were unreliable and the courts were small, they were not chasing a dream. They were tracking something the rest of the sport was simply too slow to recognize. The Foro Italico is the latest venue catching up to what that community already knew. And so the question worth putting in the comments is this: if Eala reaches the quarterfinal in Rome, does Italian tennis give her the showcase court she has already earned? Or does the Foro Italico make the same decision Melbourne made in January? The next several days will answer that. Every match, every crowd scene, every scheduling call made by Rome's tournament directors will be covered here as it unfolds. If you are not subscribed yet, you are about to miss the most closely watched clay court run of 2026 in real time. And when that moment arrives, when the marble stands of the Foro Italico are full of Filipino flags and the broadcast numbers break another record, you will want to have been here before it happened, because it is about to happen.